What is going on, everyone? Welcome to episode 78 of the Foundation First Fitness Show with Bob Echo. And today we are talking about stretching, flexibility, and basically understanding all about stretching and whether it's good. Because this week I got into a little bit of a topic discussion with one of my clients talking about stretching, with whether stretching was actually really beneficial for you or if it was just basically doing it to do it. So I wrote a blog post on this as well, which I'm going to try to be posting soon. So if you want to read some of my thoughts instead of listening to it, you can go in there. And I do post a couple types of stretches that you can do in different types of forms. When I get into it, it'll make more sense. But talking a little bit about some of the stretches key stretches that I think are really important for you to do. So not to go any more detail into that, I wanted to really touch on, one of the major things that comes down when you're talking about stretching is that flexibility is a really, really, really big, broad topic. It has a lot of different points. It has a lot of different aspects to it. It's not as cut and dry as we all would like to think. And usually, when we talk about stretching, a lot of it comes into either pre or post workout. So you'll commonly hear someone say, if you're about to do a run or if you're about to do a workout, you should look at stretching to just kind of like get the muscles ready and really start getting them to get the full range going so that you don't hurt yourself. And post training or post run, you should do some stretching so that you don't deal with soreness the next day. Funny enough, the post-training stuff is completely false. It has nothing to do with recovery. It's not going to prevent you from feeling soreness. You're going to feel soreness because you've torn some muscle tissue. So far as we know, that's what's causing the pain. And stretching will probably cause more damage because you are going to be stretching those muscles out as well. And it's really, really funny. A lot of people do workouts and they'll barely train their legs, but they'll be stretching their quads and their hamstrings. I'm like, you barely did your legs. Like, why are you stretching your quads and your hamstrings? You did nothing for them. So the soreness that you're feeling in your pecs are not going to be solved by the stretching of your quads. So that's, just make sure you keep that noted. Do I think that you should be stretching at all post-training? Yeah, it depends what the cause is. So a lot of it is a yes, no. The caveat is basically stretch with purpose and stretch for a reason. So before we go into why or what you should do with stretching, one of the main things you have to understand is that flexibility is a really important component of being able to move properly. You have to be able to get some flexibility at the muscle. So the muscles have to be able to stretch and have some elastic property in them so that you can actually get them to contract throughout their full range. Now, getting flexibility, or the flexibility that we all usually and commonly know, is static stretching. So basically holding a muscle on tension, holding a muscle or stretching a muscle out and holding that stretch for elongated period of time. So 30 seconds, 45 seconds, whatever. That is the common stretching we know of. Now, the other common stretching we know of, or the common types of flexibility we know of, is dynamic. And usually dynamic is very much basically just taking your body and going to that full range. So as you're working through your hamstring, you're basically just dropping down. You're going from shortened to lengthened and shortened to lengthened. You're just kind of going back and forth in and out of it. So usually what you'll see is when athletes or team, especially team sports, are getting ready for their game, they'll usually come together as a team, do a team warm-up or a team stretch, and basically just start loosening off and running through all the range of motion that they're going to need for their sport. Is this vital? When it comes to flexibility, it's a really, really interesting topic, simply because I'm really on the fence about stretching as a whole. The reason I'm on the fence about stretching as a whole is because a lot of it is done aimlessly. We do stretching because we've always done stretching. And the problem is that if we keep doing things that we've always been doing, we're never really going to adapt. We're never going to make up any ground. And we're really not going to start learning from the mistakes we're making. But a lot of people, a lot of strength coaches, I see this all the time. A lot of personal trainers, coaches, we stay stuck in the old ways and the old mentality of constantly doing the same thing because that's just how we've always done it. We become almost romantic about the entire topic of stretching and the topic of warming up and getting the body ready to go. A lot of my athletes before, when we do our warm-ups, a lot of them is combating a lot of the issues that they're going to be putting, or a lot of the things that they're putting themselves through throughout the day. So what I usually tell people is go with something that's more dynamic, that's never stopping. The only time you should really go into static stretching, for me personally, what I think is when you have something that becomes an issue. So if you have, and you don't really need to know the details of the intricate details of this type of issue, but if you have, let's say like a hip problem, like a AFI, so in acetabular impingement, if you have that, basically that issue, which you AFI, Layla, what is it called? What's an acetabular impingement? What's like the word that the acronym that we use for it? FAI. Oh, femoral acetabular impingement. You think I would have just spelt it out and I would have got it? Oh, that was embarrassing. I'm really happy this is going to be on the show. So I really hope someone that actually knows what that is just laughs when they heard it before. And then hopefully they got to my correction, goes like, you idiot, how did you not know that? That's good. That's awesome. I love that. I'm not editing that out. That's definitely staying in the show. So if you have an FAI, usually what they'll do is they'll try to get the hip to stretch out because it's been pinched and closed the entire time. So holding that hip flexor stretch and stretching that muscle out is going to help relax and kind of open up that muscle. Now that's going to have to go hand in hand with some kind of contractile exercise on the posterior side, so the glutes or hamstrings, to really open that hip up. But what I was getting at is you're going to do those types of stretches for an issue that is really in need of it. So if you absolutely have like a pain, a source of pain that's coming from a muscle or a joint not being able to open, and you need to sit there in a stretch position, yes. As it stands, yes, you can do that kind of a stretch if it's going to open that area up. Do I think stretching is something that you should do completely alone? No. If it's static stretching per se, when I'm talking about static stretching, is it something I think you should be doing alone? No. You should be doing it with some kind of soft tissue work, some kind of activation around it, because you're trying to use a lot of that soft tissue work by foam rolling and releasing the tension or releasing the scar tissue on that muscle, then using the activation to kind of loosen it up, and then going into a nice static stretch. Now, going back into what you should be doing, mobility or stretching as a form of movement, being dynamic. The reason why I say dynamic is because you're allowing yourself to understand how to control your body through a range of motion. So you're not just stretching and just creating a lot of movement at that joint or that flexibility and stretching ability of that muscle. You're actually teaching it to contract over that range too. So if I bring my contraction capacity or bring my stretching capacity from this to this, but I can't control it past this, well, I've just exposed myself to such a massive window of potential injury that what I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to walk straight into injury. So a lot of that discussion on whether, stretching is going to actually prevent injury, stretching will probably create a lot higher chance at injury. Not dynamic stretching, but static stretching. So holding it and then stretching it out, you're going to create a substantial amount of movement at a joint that you may not have control over. So that's really one area you want to really pay attention to. Creating flexibility over a range that you don't have control over is a very, very dangerous thing. You're playing with fire there. So I usually tell people, unless you have a significant lack of range of motion there and you need it because it's causing pain, go get it. If not, I don't usually think of static stretching. Going back to dynamic stretching for the 15th time, dynamic stretching is going to allow you to control that stretch and that movement through its entire range. So you're going to actually have control over that movement, and that's almost going to become like a teaching tool. So when you hear people talk about mobility is not just stretching. It's not just activation. It's not just range of motion and doing some weird, cool stuff on the ground. Mobility is actually the ability to control a joint or control a part of your body through a range of motion. So the key word there is control through a wide range of motion. So when you're looking at doing mobility, you're actually incorporating so many different factors. Mobility is almost an umbrella term that everything fits under. So when we talk about a mobility portion, and when you look into some of my workouts like mobility routines for runners or mobility routines for hockey players or something of that sort, or shoulder mobility, hip mobility. What I'm really trying to get you to understand is not just stretch. It has nothing to do with really just creating flexibility. It's really trying to create control over that entire range of motion. So if we go back a couple of episodes and we start talking about why people get injured, I'm going to link it in the bottom here. It's going to show up at the the top on YouTube. If you go back to looking at injuries, what usually ends up happening is you create an injury because you have a poor range, or something's not moving, or joint's stuck, or joint's not moving, or joint has too much movement. So what we do with the mobility section is we're actually trying to prevent that injury. So that's really the difference maker of flexibility, as what we know, which is basically stretch a muscle, versus mobility, which is control while we stretch and create that range. So that's the really important word that kind of gets lost in translation as we talk and we interchangeably use those words. So when it comes to mobility, one of the areas that I really like, one of the people that I really like employing is the people from Eccentrics. So a while back, I think it was episode 55 or something, I can't remember, 55 or something like that. Actually, episode 77 was supposed to have another one, but I do discuss Eccentrics, and I bring in Gail, I think in episode 55. It's going to be, I'll try to post it right up here. Gail actually comes in, Gail Garceau, she's one of the master instructors at Eccentrics, and she comes in and we discuss kind of the important details within Eccentrics. And the reason why I truly believe in what they're doing is simply because when it comes down to mobility, you got to be able to control through the range of motion. That's one of the things I noticed that Eccentrics does a lot, is they teach you how to control your body. So they get you standing, you're lying down, you're moving. It's always in motion. There's never a period where you're stopping and you're not moving. It's consistent movement, consistent movement, consistent movement. That consistency in their movement is what's allowing them to create range and be able to maintain. That's where you're going to really see that benefit, is if you can control it, then your body's going to be more likely to go there throughout the day, because your body's not going to want to move somewhere where it doesn't have control. That's where the injury comes from. So a lot of us get injured because we don't have control. We expose our body to that specific movement or that position, and then there's the injury. So if you're able to control it through that range, the likelihood of you getting hurt is a lot less. So being able to expose your body to that area is going to allow your body to want to travel there throughout the day when you're doing tasks like walking, standing, moving, leaning over to get something. Being able to control your body to that range is going to be allowing you to do those movements throughout the day. So all these poor movements that we talk about, the posture, the seated posture, all these things, they become a lot less stressful in your body because they're always able to explore areas that you have control. So you're more likely to stick and adhere to those benefits that you just worked for. So here's my recommendation. If you're about to start running and you're about to warm up for your run, should you stretch or do any mobility stuff before the run? Yes, absolutely. And you should be doing things that are specifically designed to help you reduce the likelihood of injury during that sport by reducing the complications that your day is causing. So if you go to the end of this episode, and I'm going to leave it at the, if you go to my Instagram page, I'm going to have something posted. I'm going to have something posted by today, at least for sure. It was probably posted yesterday. I'm going to have it posted yesterday. Some mobility stuff that you should do. Basically, the fundamental mobility exercises that you should do that's going to combat the majority of things you do throughout your day. Standing, walking, sitting, driving, typing at a computer, all the things that you're going to need to know. I'm going to put them in there. It's going to be like a 6 or 7 exercise thing. I haven't really thought it all through. Basically just coming up with it on the fly, but it's going to be there. You're going to be able to go through those exercises, run through them all, and that's going to be able to kind of prep you for the more general warm-up. If you're a runner and you want to do it, obviously you don't really need to warm up all your the shoulder muscles and stuff like that and get really the shoulder mobility, although you probably should. There's going to be a little bit of a runner's warm-up as well, so the key fundamental runner's warm-up. So I'm going to do 2, the fundamental exercises to warm up and runner's fundamental warm-up. So if you're a runner, triathlete, whatever you are, swimmer, cyclist, the warm-up stuff is going to be there for you to be able to do. That way you're going to be able to prep your body for that event. For the post-training, what should you do post-training? You should treat your body post-training as much as you did before. You should be doing the foam rolling to help kind of combat some of those issues that might have come back throughout the workout. And then the mobility stuff is just great to repeat on a regular basis. There's nothing wrong with doing some more mobility throughout the day. It allows you to retain a lot of what you just worked on. It's almost like you do, you cram for a math test. And the number one thing we do, the reason why we suck every other year, we keep going from one year, we go to the next year, we forget everything we just did, because what happens is we study for the exam. The second the exam's done, we empty that part of our brain out. We completely empty that partition of our brain and just go right into learning something else. So we completely eliminate and forget all the hard work we just put in. So you put in about 3 weeks, which is a little bit of a stretch for most of us who have gone to school. 3 weeks is a little bit of a stretch for someone saying they've put 3 weeks of studying in. It's probably like 3.5 hours, like 3 hours. It's probably like 3.5 hours, 4 hours before the exam starts. So all that work you just put in, you basically just threw it out the door when you completely emptied it from your brain. So what I would recommend you do is do something more consistently. It's going to be a lot easier to do. You don't have to do it as aggressively. You don't have to spend as much time doing it, but if you're doing it consistently, you'll be able to maintain that result over a long period of time, and you'll start being able to progress with your mobility stuff. And it's actually going to help you progress in the workouts as well. So if you're a runner, you're going to be able to move better. In the gym, you're going to be moving better. Moving better is going to increase your movement capacity and your ability to perform better in the gym and get to those results faster. So it's all a big key. It all kind of lines up. So all in all, should you stretch? Yes, but it depends what you're stretching for. If it's injured, yes. If not, mobility is the way to go. Keep that body moving and everything should be just fine. Until that next episode, guys, keep building that foundation. Take